My name is Josh Null. I'm the owner of Gulf Coast Financial Advisors. That is a 100% locally owned, 100% independent investment management and financial planning firm. We have offices in Fairhope, Orange Beach, and Mobile. For those of y'all not familiar with the area, all those are located in Alabama along the Gulf Coast. Today we're going to talk about probably one of the biggest fears that anyone has that has spent years and years and years saving for retirement, and that is picking somebody that to manage your money and they end up committing fraud. We have a recent case going on down here at the Gulf Coast where someone out in Point Clear, Alabama took somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 to $40 million worth of investments, primarily from pre-retirees and retirees, and had promised a bunch of pretty fantastic returns on the investments, was acting in the form and function of an investment manager. Come to find out the guy was never licensed, and come to find out that the money's gone. So a collection of people in small town USA, small town Alabama, lost millions of dollars from this guy, at least so far. Hopefully there's some recovery there. But that is just a prime example. So here's how to avoid financial advisor fraud. Here's some red flags to look for to help you avoid having any type of situation happen to you with these poor people that dealt with the Point Clear quote-unquote financial advisor. The first thing you need to figure out is the person that is trying to manage your money, if they are even legally a financial advisor. Financial advisor is a term that gets used pretty broadly in our business, even though it's not necessarily supposed to. Really what a financial advisor is intended to mean is somebody that has a securities license that has been given the authority either from the SEC and or from the appropriate FINRA or state regulatory body to manage other people's money. And a lot of times what you'll find in these fraud cases is that the person may hold themselves out as a financial advisor or an investment manager or something along those lines, but they don't have any type of securities license to back that claim up. Well, how does the average person walking down the street looking for investment help figure that out? The easiest way is just to go to what's called broker check. So broker check is literally what it says. You just Google broker check, I think it's .org, and there you can type in the person's name that you are wanting to check out, whether that person, it'll tell you if that person is licensed or not, and more importantly, or as importantly, it's going to tell you what type of securities license that person holds. For example, if someone is trying to sell you a commissionable mutual fund, they need to have a certain type of securities license to do so. If they don't have that securities license, then they are operating fraudulently. The most common type of licenses that you're going to see in our industry are going to be Series 6, Series 63, 65, which is what I have, 66, and then there's the Series 7, which is kind of the old stockbroker securities license that if you've ever seen the movie Wall Street where they're cold calling everybody, all those guys in there has Series 7 licenses. Anyway, what you'll find is you're going to find out if that person holding themselves out as a financial advisor really is a financial advisor, is actually securities licensed, and then even more so, you can look and see if they've had any customer complaints. They're called disclosures. Now, it's always a little bit of a double-edged sword when it comes to disclosures because it's not a very high bar to chin to make a complaint against a financial advisor. It actually kind of skews in the client's favor, not a bad thing. But a lot of times you'll see stuff on there that you can have somebody that's a perfectly fine, really good financial advisor, and just somewhere along the line they tripped up, or maybe there was a misunderstanding with a client. The client made a complaint, and even if that complaint was resolved, it still stays on the financial advisor's record unless they get it expunged, which is kind of an expensive and time-consuming process. I don't have any disclosures. Doesn't mean I haven't made mistakes along the way, and if you do this long enough, generally speaking, sometimes you'll see a disclosure on a financial advisor's record. The most important thing you're looking for is a pattern. You're looking for a pattern where a financial advisor has misappropriated or misused their clients' money. You're looking for a consistent theme over the years, and if you have that, that's a big red flag. So, 2 red flags for avoiding fraud with your investments by a financial advisor. Number 1 is just figure out if they are even a securities licensed financial advisor. That's step 1. And step 2, if you find out that they are, figure out what type of securities license do they have. Do they have the appropriate type for your situation? And then step 3 is just figuring out if they have a history of disclosures. Do they have a history of customer complaints? Again, if there are complaints on there, you want to and you like the person, you want to do business with them, ask them about it. There may be a perfectly reasonable explanation to why the person had that disclosure. What you're looking for is a pattern. And if you can do those things, again, brokercheck.org, and then the SEC, not the football organization, but the Securities and Exchange Commission, has their own site for fee-based, fee-only type financial advisors like myself. You can look on there and you'll get more information as well. Another important way to avoid financial advisor fraud is to understand the difference between custody and discretion. Generally speaking, whenever you hear a story about quote unquote financial advisor fraud, or even just general investment fraud, it usually comes down to where the money was held, the electronic dollars, where were they custodied. So for example, if you have money at a bank, like locally, we've got Regions, PNC, Wells Fargo, community banks, so on and so forth. If you have a checking account, savings account, whatever they have custody of your funds. And generally speaking, it's a bank. Most banks around, retail banks are pretty well known. For the most part, you can kind of rest easy. Hey, I know where my digital dollars are being located, right? In the investment advisor space, it's a little bit different. You're going to typically use, especially in the independent space where we operate, you're going to use what's called a third-party custodian. So the most well-known of those are going to be Charles Schwab, which is the biggest third-party custodian. There's going to be Fidelity. And then probably the third largest that's going to be a little bit lesser known is Pershing. But a lot of y'all that have investment managers, particularly along the Gulf Coast, you've probably gotten a statement from Pershing as a custodian before. Now, why is custody important? Because back to what I was saying, when you see the investment fraud, especially if they hold themselves as a financial advisor, as long as they don't have custody of your funds, as long as that money is custodied at Schwab or Fidelity or Pershing, it doesn't necessarily mean that there still can't be some kind of shenanigans. But what it means is your investment professional, or maybe somebody that's fraudulently holding themselves out as an investment professional, does not have direct access to that money. They cannot go in and transfer the money from that account to themselves if it's at a third-party custodian. I'm sure there's ways for the really onerous ones to figure that out, but I'm saying for the most part, if that were to ever happen, like with Charles Schwab, they're going to call you immediately. They're going to stop that transaction. It has to be with your approval. All right. Now contrast that with discretion. Discretion means that your investment professional does not have to call you every time that they make a trade, whether they buy or sell something. They have the discretion to buy and sell things inside your investment account. Now, discretion can have its own ball of wax headaches with it, but for the most part, if you're with a properly licensed security professional and you're at a well-known third-party custodian, and they've got discretion, then generally speaking, things are going to be happening that at least make somewhat sense to you with the buying and selling of securities. One of the primary ways you can make sure, or you can help avoid fraud with your investment dollars, especially those you all save for retirement, is make sure that you understand who has custody of your money. In rare situations, don't ever accept a non-custodial bank or investment account statement. Make sure if the money is custodied at Schwab or Fidelity or Wells Fargo, wherever it's custodied with third party, make sure that that is clearly on the statement that you get. And then those of y'all that are already in the investment management space as a client, you know that the difference between having someone call you for transactions on buying and selling funds, that's a broker, versus a fee-based or fee-only financial advisor having discretion on the accounts and doing buying and selling without your constant permission, even if there's ongoing dialogue. So those are two really important things, especially around custody, to remember when you're trying to make sure you haven't worked all this time and then some fraudster comes in and misallocates your money or just outright steals it. Another way to avoid potential fraud in your investment accounts, particularly you all that have saved for retirement, is people that guarantee returns, especially guarantee high returns. And usually it's kind of a double-sided coin when they are guaranteeing returns. There's some red flags are going to be around this. They're guaranteeing, at least a market rate or higher return. I mean, if somebody promises you a 3.5% return on a money market account, that's pretty easy to verify. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the investment professionals, or maybe the fraudulently presented investment professionals that are saying, hey, I can make you 10, 12, 15, 20, 30+%, whatever the number is. I can guarantee you that every year. Some of y'all are ding, 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 and that's what Bernie Madoff did. Now, he didn't go with a super high number. He just guaranteed a certain percentage return every year. Well, that's almost impossible to do in our line of work, because if you're in and with a true investment manager, that means he or she has the money invested in the stock market. While the stock market in general returns around 8 to 9%, depending on how you measure it, on average every year, it rarely does 8 to 9% in one given year. Sometimes it's down 5%, sometimes it's up 20%. It's kind of all over the board. And that's really hard for someone to promise you a steady return on your investment, when, as long as they're invested in some type of equity or stock-based portfolio, that means that how in the world are they doing that when this thing may be up and down all over the place, right? So you got to be careful with that. Usually, in my experience, when someone is coming in with a guaranteed return, number one, just honestly, just get up and walk away and give us a call, because we'll walk you through where that number is nonsense. But let's say you continue to listen. Generally speaking, you're going to see a couple of traits come through. Those are usually coupled with high pressure sales tactics. I don't know if there's a certain level of greed or misrepresentation that those particular type of salespeople like to do, but once they get their hooks in you and they're telling you that they can guarantee this certain high rate, they don't want to let the hooks out, and they're going to pressure you a lot of times into making a transaction, to signing a contract, making a sale. Sometimes what's being presented to you is the salesperson may just not have enough experience with that particular product, and they don't mean to tell you something wrong, but they are anyway. Either way, you need to find out exactly, because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is what is in writing and what you sign on to. Everything else is just talk. So in summary, for those of y'all that have worked so hard, saved your money, especially y'all that have built up nice 401k balances, retirement accounts, IRAs, investment accounts, and all that, and you're thinking about retiring, or maybe you're already in retirement, and you're looking at getting some professional investment advisor help, and you're really worried about all the horror stories you've heard about fraud, here are some key tips to help you. You're never going to fully insulate yourself against bad actors out there, but these are things that you can do that will really help weed out some of the people that you should not be doing business with. Number one is you want to verify the securities licensing of the person that is trying to manage your money. Does this person have a securities license? And if so, what type of securities license? Do they have the right securities license to do what they're trying to do with me? And is there a history of customer complaints? Is there a pattern? Right? That's number one. Number two, you want to know who is actually holding your electronic dollars. Who's the custodian? We mentioned it earlier in the video, but the most well-known third-party custodians in our line of work are going to be Charles Schwab, Fidelity, and then here Pershing is a big one. Maybe not his name brand, but they're huge. They're number 3 on the independent third-party custodians. You want to make sure you recognize that name. You want to make sure that you get the statements from the third-party custodian. It's not that you never, ever give a financial advisor custody of your money, but it better be it's a rare instance where that is justified. And in my opinion, it's never justified getting the statement directly from the financial advisor. It's fine if they generate those statements, but you need a backup from the custodian that is housing the money. And then finally, you want to run away from guaranteed returns, especially if they're high returns. Again, to clarify, I'm not talking about normal rate of returns. I'm talking about somebody that is promising you a market rate or higher return guaranteed year after year, and coupled with trying to pressure you into more or less trying to convince you that you're dumb for not believing their line of BS to sign up for this guaranteed rate of return, and they're trying to pressure you into that, and they're trying to get you to sign paperwork, thick paperwork usually, that does not have, that before you've had a chance to read it. And kind of a subgenre of that is just be careful with annuity shops. If they are guaranteeing you a certain rate of return, read the fine print. More often than not, they're talking about a guaranteed rate of return for your income rider. That's fine. I have no problem with that. My heartburn is when they try to use that number as a rate of return on your money. There's a difference between rate of return of your money and rate of return on your money. So do those checklists of things. Not that that's always going to avoid financial advisor fraud, but that's going to weed out the bad actors pretty quickly. And if a person becomes defensive or can't answer, the person wanting to manage your money becomes defensive or can't answer the questions or does a word salad, get up, walk away. It's not worth the risk. Yeah, there's too many good professionals out there, especially along here in the Gulf Coast. A lot of my peers are very honest men and women. You can find them and you'll be much happier in the long run. If you're interested in continuing the conversation, it's very simple and easy to get a hold of us. We are live human beings, not AI generated, and we pick up our phone. So if you want to call us, the number is 251-327-2124. Also, you can find us on our website. That is gulfcoastfa.com. So Gulf Coast and then FA is in financialadvisor.com. On the site, there is a blue button in the upper right-hand corner that will say Let's Talk. When you click that, you have three choices to get a hold of us. You can put a 15-minute introductory phone call on my calendar. You can put a 30-minute Zoom, or you can do our preference. We always like to meet in person. You can do a 1-hour in-person meeting at any of our 3 office locations. We are in downtown Fairhope. We're in the Portico development off Fairhope Avenue. We have another office in Orange Beach. We're just down the road from the wharf off Canal. And then we have a third office over in Mobile that is near the intersection of Dolphin Street and I-65. So 251-327-2124, gulfcoastfa.com, or schedule something with us in person. We'd love to meet with you. However you reach out to us, make sure you do.